this, brother.
Right.
This wasn't reported on Fox News. This wasn't reported on CNN or CNBC or MSNBC. This has missed the media outright.
Right.
So it's so vitally important, and I want our people particularly to understand it's so vitally necessary that we have the Final Call newspaper, that we have black media and ownership of black media.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't, then we're going to allow someone else to write the story or to rewrite the story. Is that right?
Right.
And so it's important, brother, that we continue to do this Final Call News Hour. We continue to support this Final Call newspaper, brother. But that absolutely disintegrates the relationship between the community and the police force when these types of events, particularly even the cases that you mentioned with the sodomy of brother, and Sean Bell, the 50 shots.
There you go. Yes, sir.
You know, there's been an attack on black people in general, but black youth and black male youth in particular, brother. And it seems to be that this is becoming more commonplace, that it's becoming more frequent. Every time you turn around, there's some type of a grievous assault against people of color, brother.
Absolutely.
In West Virginia, just recently, the sister who they did so terribly bad, the 6 whites in that area. So every week you have something where the whites of this country think that they can do anything to black people, but that day's over, brother.
Yes, sir. And man, that's an excellent example too, because that very story dealing with that beautiful young sister and her, the total abusing of her by these 6 white people in rural West Virginia didn't even hit CNN or CNBC or MSNBC or any of these news outlets or any of these papers. It was the Final Call newspaper who made that story front page news.
Right.
And it wasn't until after we publicized it and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan sent a delegation to West Virginia that the story began to get national media attention.
Yes, sir.
You know, so I mean, I have to echo what you said, man, how important black news is. You know, and it's not just black news, but it's black news.
Right.
You know, but it's news that's for all oppressed people, all of those people who are underrepresented in the media.
Absolutely.
Television or written media.
Absolutely, brother.
Now, the thing that stands out in my mind about this particular case also is that the first question is, you know, of course on squad cars, you always have that little insignia, police to protect and to serve, right? And we teach our children in school, let me reverse that. White people teach their children in school that when they get in trouble, they need to find a police officer.
Right.
Now, if these people are officials, officers, and they are clearly in a position of trust, should they or should they not be charged or be held more culpable or more responsible than an average citizen when it comes to breaking the law?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said that a police officer or someone who's entrusted with that type of responsibility should be held to a very, very high standard, a higher standard than the average civilian per se, because these people have given oaths to protect and to serve and to defend the peoples in their communities. And so they absolutely should be held to a higher standard than the average civilian.
Right. And I think just on the strength of that, the fact that they're in a position of trust, they're officials in law enforcement, that if they're found breaking the law, the stiffer penalty should apply automatically. You shouldn't even have a case where it could be determined whether it's going to be a misdemeanor or a felony. Man, you're in a position of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the police officers are the ones who are the enforcers of the law.
Right.
So if I'm the enforcer of the law, then I should be keenly aware of what the law should be. So when I, as a police officer, trespass against the very laws that I'm entrusted to carry out, then I should definitely be held more accountable. And, you know, it was very key what you stated earlier that white children are taught to look at police officers as a source of refuge,
Right.
as protection. But it hasn't been so in the black community, brother. We absolutely have no refuge in the police officer. We find police brutality all over the United States.
Right.
We find it in Los Angeles
Yes,
and
sir.
Chicago and Philadelphia and New York in this case, and in Denver as well. And we find that there's always been this double standard when dealing with the police force in America, whether you black or white.
Absolutely.
It's plain.
Absolutely. So we need to find somewhere to police ourselves, really.
Absolutely.
That's the truth.
Yes,
now,
sir.
there's something that stood out in this that just really just bothered me. And it was a quote, I think it's on page 33. And it talked about the police doing old school policing.
Oh, yes, sir. I read that.
Let me see if I can find it exactly. Okay. And the sister made a...
Yeah, it ends here on page 4 and carries over to 33.
Right. Now read that part on page 4.
She says, I want justice for my son. They tell me this is old school policing, but I am older than either one of them.
Right.
So what do they know of old school? If that were true, then they should have put him in their car and brought him home to us.
Right. Now, what do you think the police meant when they called their actions old school in regards to taking a little brother and dropping him off in the middle of nowhere?
Old school Ku Klux Klan ride. That's what it reminds me of. Old school Jim Crow.
Right.
Old school drowned brothers in the swamps of Louisiana. That's what old school seems
old
to me.
school.
You know, she stated in the best way, and she said if that was old school policing, then you would have brought the child home.
Right.
That's how someone who was dignified and moral and ethical, because ethics is important in policing.
Right.
You have to be held to a higher standard of morality and ethics.
Right.
Brother. And so the ethical thing to do, because this young man was simply throwing, what was he throwing? Eggs.
Throwing eggs at cars.
So did that warrant them to take him on some ride and take him to some remote place to leave that young man? Particularly as it stated in the article, next to train tracks and to where this man was actually in danger of potentially being run over by a train.
Man, sure you're right, brother. And I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you that old school, they're talking about old school in the same sense as in Los Angeles. You mentioned Los Angeles. They'll take a brother who's associated with the Crips and drop him off in the Blood neighborhood. Right. You know what I mean? Or drop him off in the Latin King neighborhood or some rival gang where they know that if he don't make it out of there, he's going to die. His life is in danger.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what they did. And we have to keep in mind that this isn't a 18 or a 19-year-old boy. This is a 14-year-old boy.
That's right. That's right. You know, and the brother's father, James Hazel, states in here that, now, to put it in light or in a proper light, he said, well, what if we, the parents, had taken the boy out to the woods somewhere and left him?
Right.
You know, people used to do that to their dogs back in the day when they didn't want their dog and they couldn't feed him or they couldn't take him. They'll take him out somewhere, some remote place and leave him.
Right.
So if you could do that to a dog and get away for that, how much more should someone get punished for doing that to a human being?
Right.
Brother?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Particularly those who are there to protect and to serve.
Yes, sir.
It's criminal intention and criminal